chosen one. Pause for a moment and listen carefully. You are not here by accident. This message is not finding you randomly, and this moment is not ordinary. Heaven has pressed pause on the noise around you because something is aligning behind the scenes. You have felt it already, that quiet stirring in your spirit, that sense that something big is approaching, something that will shift your life suddenly and decisively. This is not hype. This is preparation. You might want to prepare yourself for sudden wealth, not because money defines you, but because what is coming requires capacity, maturity, and spiritual alignment. You have walked through seasons where lack tried to teach you shame. You have endured moments when provision was tight, when prayers felt unanswered, when effort did not immediately produce reward, and yet, you are still standing. That alone tells you something about who you are. You were never meant to live at the level of survival. You were trained there. You were forged there. Scarcity was not your destination. It was your classroom. Every delay, every closed door, every silent stretch was shaping your discernment, strengthening your endurance, and purifying your motives. Chosen one. Sudden wealth does not come to the unprepared heart. It comes to the disciplined mind, the surrendered will, and the spirit that has learned to trust God without guarantees. That is why your journey has looked different from those around you. While others were distracted, you were being refined. While others were rushing, you were being restrained. While others were consuming, you were being taught restraint. This is the divine order. Heaven never releases overflow into chaos, it releases it into order. You must understand this clearly. Wealth in your life will not be an accident. It will be an assignment. What is approaching you is not just money. It is responsibility, influence, and reach. That is why the pressure intensified before the breakthrough. That is why attacks increased when you decided to change your mindset. Darkness always reacts when it senses an incoming transfer. The resistance you have felt recently is not a sign to retreat. It is confirmation that provision is drawing near. This is why you are being asked to prepare yourself internally before anything changes externally. God does not first change your bank account. He changes your capacity. He stretches your vision so that abundance does not shrink you, inflate your ego, or derail your calling. You are learning how to hold more without losing yourself. You are learning how to receive without becoming dependent. You are learning how to steward without idolizing. There is a reason you cannot go back to who you used to be. Old habits, old thought patterns, old comforts, they cannot coexist with what is coming. Sudden wealth exposes everything unresolved. It amplifies character. It magnifies discipline or the lack of it. That is why this message is finding you now, before anything visibly shifts. This is mercy. This is divine timing. This is preparation. You may have noticed a growing restlessness inside you, a holy dissatisfaction with just enough. Not greed, not comparison, but a deep knowing that your life is meant to fund something bigger than yourself. You are meant to build, to support, to release, to bless. You are meant to become a channel, not a container. And channels must be clean, aligned, and open. This is why God has been pruning you. This is why some people were removed. This is why certain opportunities fell apart, not punishment precision. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, heaven makes this promise unmistakably clear. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. This is not poetic comfort. This is a blueprint. Strength comes before soaring. Renewal comes before acceleration. Waiting on the Lord is not passive, it is preparatory. Chosen one, you are in the waiting that sharpens, not the waiting that wastes. You are being recalibrated for altitude. Eagles cannot fly with unnecessary weight, and neither can you. That is why certain attachments have become uncomfortable. That is why compromise no longer sits right in your spirit. That is why distractions feel heavier than they used to. You're being lightened for lift. Hear this clearly, don't do it. No matter the price, don't sell your integrity for speed. Don't trade obedience for shortcuts. Don't rush what God is staging precisely. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. If you stay aligned, what is coming will arrive suddenly, but it will stay. Rushed blessings leave quickly. Prepared blessings establish legacy. This is the moment where your agreement matters. Heaven responds to alignment. When your thoughts, habits, and faith come into agreement with God's timing, acceleration follows. You don't chase wealth. You prepare for assignment, and provision chases you. That is the order. That is the law. And it is already in motion. Before you move forward, take a stand in faith. If this message resonates with your spirit, like this message, share it with someone who needs confirmation, and subscribe so you stay connected to what is unfolding. And as an act of alignment, comment a prophetic number below 77 as a declaration that you are ready to steward what God is preparing to release. Chosen one. What you are stepping into cannot be understood without first honoring what you have survived. The world often glamorizes wealth as luck, timing, or intelligence, but you know better. Your story exposes a deeper truth: capacity is forged, not gifted. Before God entrusts great provision, He allows great pressure, not to break you, but to build the internal structure required to hold what is coming without collapsing under it. Look back carefully. The seasons that nearly crushed you were not random. The isolation, the misunderstanding, the prolonged waiting, the moments where it felt like you were carrying more weight than anyone around you. Those were not signs of abandonment. They were evidence of selection. Ordinary vessels are never tested beyond convenience. Chosen vessels are tested beyond comfort. Pressure revealed what was inside you, and more importantly, it created room for something new to be formed. You were forced to develop discernment when resources were limited. You learned the value of restraint when excess was unavailable. You learned how to pray when there was no backup plan. These lessons could not have been taught in abundance. Scarcity trained your instincts. Delay sharpened your hearing. Disappointment burned away illusions. And through it all, you did not quit. That is why you are still here. That is why you are still being spoken to. Sudden wealth requires more than desire, it requires stability. Money amplifies what already exists. If fear dominates, wealth multiplies fear. If ego leads, wealth magnifies pride. If wounds remain untreated, wealth exposes them publicly. This is why God allowed pressure to touch every weak point in you. Not to shame you, but to heal you. Not to humiliate you, but to mature you. What felt like punishment was actually protection. There were moments when you questioned yourself deeply. Moments when silence from heaven felt louder than any accusation. Moments when obedience did not produce immediate results. In those moments, something critical was happening. Your faith was being separated from outcomes. You were learning how to trust God even when the math didn't work, even when logic failed, even when your emotions resisted. That kind of faith is rare. That kind of faith can be trusted with increase. Chosen one. This is why shortcuts were denied to you. This is why doors closed that seemed perfect on paper. If you had entered too early, success would have cost you your soul. God was more interested in who you were becoming than what you were acquiring. He was building depth before width, roots before branches, endurance before expansion. What grows fast without roots collapses under its own weight. You may have noticed that your tolerance for shallow things has decreased. Conversations that once entertained you now exhaust you. Environments that once energized you now drain you. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. You are outgrowing places that cannot sustain where you are headed. Pressure refined your appetite. It trained you to value substance over appearance, truth over approval, obedience over applause. Even your failures were part of the process. Not the failures themselves, but how you responded to them. You took responsibility instead of hiding. You learned instead of blaming. You adjusted instead of giving up. This posture matters. Heaven looks for stewards, not perfectionists. Wealth does not require flawlessness, it requires humility, teachability, and accountability. Pressure revealed that you could be corrected without becoming bitter. There is also a spiritual dimension you cannot ignore. Pressure is often the language of warfare. When the enemy senses future influence, he attempts early exhaustion. When darkness detects coming provision, it tries to distort identity. That heaviness you felt was not because you were weak, it was because you were targeted. But what the enemy meant to suffocate you became the very resistance that strengthened your spiritual muscles. The ancient words recorded in Romans still echo today. The ancient words recorded in Romans chapter 5, verse 3 say, "We also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance." This is not passive suffering. This is productive pressure. Perseverance is not stubbornness, it is sustained alignment under strain. And perseverance produces character. Character produces hope. Hope does not disappoint. Chosen one, you are carrying something solid now. You are not easily shaken by opinion. You are not easily distracted by trends. You are not easily seduced by quick wins. This stability did not come naturally, it was constructed through fire. And because it was built under pressure, it will not collapse under blessing. That is the difference between those who briefly touch wealth and those who are entrusted with it long term. Understand this: God never wastes pain. Every tear watered the ground of your future. Every delay strengthened your discernment. Every rejection refined your direction. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not overlooked. You are being positioned. And when the release comes, it will not overwhelm you, it will obey you, because you have been trained to govern, not to panic. This section of your life proves one thing unmistakably: you can be trusted with more. You have already carried invisible weight. Visible provision will not destroy you. It will simply reveal what pressure has already produced. Chosen one, there is a reason certain biblical stories keep resurfacing in seasons like this. They are not history lessons, they are mirrors. And one of the clearest mirrors for what you are experiencing right now is the story of Jacob and Laban. This was not just a family conflict. This was a divine demonstration of how wealth moves when God intervenes. It reveals how resources shift from manipulation to blessing, from control to covenant, from deception to destiny. Jacob entered Laban's house with nothing but a promise. No land, no silver, no leverage, only the word God had spoken over his life. Laban, on the other hand, was already established, cunning, experienced, and skilled in manipulation. He changed Jacob's wages repeatedly. He exploited Jacob's diligence. He benefited from Jacob's favor while attempting to keep Jacob dependent. And for a long time, it looked like the dishonest man was winning. Chosen one, pay attention here. Jacob did not prosper because Laban was fair. Jacob prospered because God was faithful. That distinction matters. Your breakthrough is not dependent on the integrity of people around you. It is anchored in the integrity of God. Laban's system was built on control, but Jacob's future was built on covenant. And covenant always outlives manipulation. For years, Jacob worked under unfair conditions. He labored while being underestimated. He stayed disciplined while being exploited. And yet, something invisible was happening. God was quietly shifting the equation. What Laban thought he controlled, God was recalibrating. What looked like delay was actually divine setup. Because when God decides to move wealth, He does not negotiate with injustice, He overrides it. There came a moment when the balance shifted suddenly, not gradually. Suddenly, Jacob's flocks began to multiply, and strength replaced weakness, increase replaced limitation. And the very system designed to keep Jacob small became the channel through which he was enlarged. Laban noticed it too. His sons noticed it. Envy surfaced. Tension rose. Because when wealth begins to transfer, the atmosphere always changes. This is important. Chosen one, the transfer did not happen because Jacob became aggressive. It happened because God stepped in. Jacob did not cheat Laban. He obeyed God. He followed divine instruction even when it didn't make sense. And obedience unlocked strategy. Strategy unlocked increase. Increase exposed hearts. That is the order. The Spirit spoke clearly through the record of this moment, as was spoken in the book of Genesis, chapter 31, verse 9. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. This is not symbolic language. This is literal transfer. God did not bless both equally. He removed from one and gave to another, and He did it righteously. Chosen one. This is where many misunderstand the nature of divine justice. God is not neutral when covenant is involved. He does not reward manipulation forever. He does not allow deception to hold power indefinitely. There comes a moment when He intervenes decisively, and when He does, it is often sudden, undeniable, and irreversible. Notice something else: Jacob had to leave. When the transfer was complete, God told him to move. Increase required separation. Blessing demanded transition. Staying would have invited conflict. Obedience required courage. Jacob had to trust that the same God who provided would also protect. Wealth was not the end, it was the fuel for the next assignment. This speaks directly to you. Some of what you endured was not because you were weak, but because you were planted temporarily in a system that benefited from your favor. You added value. You carried grace. You increased what you touched. And yet, you were not honored proportionally. That season is ending, not because you fought harder, but because God is intervening. But hear this carefully when transfer happens. Motives are exposed. Jacob did not boast. He did not retaliate. He moved quietly, obediently, and decisively. He understood that provision without peace is a trap. God does not just give wealth, He gives direction. And direction is what preserves blessing. You may be approaching a similar crossroads, a moment where staying familiar feels safer, but obedience calls you forward. This is where discernment matters. Sudden wealth is not just about receiving, it is about releasing old dependencies. Jacob had to trust God beyond Laban's house. You will too. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. The same God who shifted flocks in the field is able to shift contracts, opportunities, ideas, and resources today. Systems may resist, but they cannot override covenant. What is blessed cannot be blocked forever. Before moving forward, anchor this moment with a declaration. Comment below with a short statement, no more than 4 words, that captures your alignment. Type, "God restores justly." This is not a ritual, it is a confession. By doing so, you are acknowledging that increase comes from God, not manipulation, and that you trust His timing and His justice. Chosen one, when provision draws near. Opposition rarely announces itself loudly at first. It shifts atmospheres. It changes tones. It introduces confusion where clarity once lived. This is the phase where many misinterpret resistance as failure, when in truth it is often confirmation. Enemies panic when provision approaches not only human opposition, but spiritual resistance as well. Darkness reacts to what it cannot stop. And what you are sensing right now is not regression, it is reaction. You may have noticed subtle disruptions, misunderstandings increasing without cause. Delays appearing at the edge of progress, distractions multiplying when focus matters most. This is not random. When heaven authorizes expansion, pressure attempts to preempt it. The enemy's goal is not always to destroy you outright, it is to exhaust you before the release arrives. To make you doubt your discernment, to tempt you into abandoning patience at the threshold. But hear this clearly, chosen one resistance does not determine outcome. Alignment does. Opposition is loud, but authority is quiet. God does not rush to prove Himself to chaos. He allows turbulence to reveal who is anchored. That is why your stillness matters more now than ever. Panic leaks power. Peace preserves it. You are learning something critical in this season. Not every battle requires engagement. Some conflicts are designed to pull you out of position. Some arguments are distractions dressed as emergencies. Some criticisms are bait. The closer you get to provision, the more selective you must become with your attention. What you focus on determines what you empower. This is why discernment sharpens under pressure. You are beginning to see clearly who benefits from your doubt and who benefits from your obedience. When wealth is approaching, counterfeit voices grow louder. They offer urgency without wisdom, shortcuts without peace, validation without truth. But you are no longer easily impressed. You have been trained to listen beneath words to motives, to fruit, to alignment. Chosen one. Understand this enemy's panic because provision changes power dynamics. When God elevates you, access shifts, influence shifts, dependence shifts, and those who were comfortable when you were limited become uncomfortable when you are expanded. This is not because you changed, it is because the balance did. Light exposes what darkness relied on remaining hidden. Even spiritually, there is agitation. When the enemy realizes he cannot cancel your assignment, he tries to contaminate your focus. He introduces fear masked as wisdom. He whispers caution where courage is required. He exaggerates risk to minimize obedience. This is why you must remain grounded in truth, not emotion. Feelings fluctuate. Calling does not. Heaven speaks clearly through the words preserved across generations. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 7. When a man's ways please the Lord, He makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Notice the order. Alignment comes first, peace follows. You do not negotiate with enemies, you align with God. He handles the rest. This does not mean opposition disappears instantly. It means it loses authority. It means it can no longer dictate your direction. It means what rises against you will not succeed in stopping you. And often, The same resistance that tried to block you becomes the evidence that God is with you. There is also a sobering truth here. Not everyone who smiled at you during preparation will celebrate you during elevation. Some relationships were seasonal. Some alliances were conditional. This is not betrayal. It is clarity. God is simplifying your environment so that what He adds will not be contaminated by what He removes. This is why humility is essential now. Elevation tests character more than pressure ever did. When provision arrives, how you respond determines longevity. You are not called to flaunt blessing, but to steward it, not to prove anything, but to build what God entrusted. The loudest victories are often the most fragile. Quiet obedience builds what lasts. Chosen one, remain teachable, remain anchored, remain responsive. The moment you stop listening is the moment resistance finds leverage. But as long as you stay aligned, nothing rising against you will have the authority to overthrow what God has ordained. This is also a moment to recognize support. No journey like yours is meant to be walked in isolation. Wisdom multiplies when shared. Encouragement strengthens resolve. If this message has helped steady your spirit, consider expressing that support like the message. Share it with someone who may be misreading resistance as defeat. And subscribe so you remain connected to what is unfolding. These are simple acts, but they help ensure that truth continues to reach those standing at similar crossroads. You are not under attack because you are weak. You are opposed because you are approaching something valuable. And what is guarded fiercely is usually worth claiming. Stay positioned. Stay obedient. Stay calm. Provision does not arrive to panic, it arrives to purpose. Chosen one, before the floodgates open, heaven always teaches its people how to sow in dry ground. This is one of the most misunderstood principles of preparation. Many believe sowing only makes sense when resources are abundant, when margins feel safe, when outcomes are guaranteed. But in the economy of God, the most powerful seeds are often planted in seasons of restraint. This season is not asking you to give recklessly. It is teaching you to act intentionally, to move with discernment rather than fear, to practice generosity before abundance arrives, so that abundance does not corrupt you when it does. What you do now, with what feels limited, reveals how you will behave when overflow comes. Preparation is proven in small decisions repeated consistently. Let's bring this into everyday life. Sowing in drought can look very ordinary. It may look like continuing to invest in learning when money feels tight, buying a book, taking a course, sharpening a skill instead of numbing yourself with distractions. That seed says, I believe my future requires growth. It may look like helping someone quietly even when no one will praise you, covering a meal, offering time, listening patiently. That seed says, I trust God to replenish what I release. Sometimes sowing is not financial at all. It can be discipline, waking up earlier to pray or plan when sleep feels scarce. That is a seed of alignment. It can be integrity, refusing a shortcut that would bring quick money but compromise peace. That is a seed of character. It can be consistency, showing up to your work with excellence even when recognition is absent. That is a seed of stewardship. Chosen one, drought seasons expose motives. When you sow only when it's comfortable, you are still in control. When you sow when it's inconvenient, you are trusting God. And trust is what activates multiplication. God is not impressed by the size of the seed. He responds to the posture of the sower. Consider this practical example. Imagine someone who feels stuck financially but chooses to tithe or give intentionally anyway, not out of obligation, but out of trust. They adjust their lifestyle, cut unnecessary spending, and keep honoring God first. Over time, they develop discipline, clarity, and peace. When increase finally comes, they already know how to manage it. The seed was not just money, it was order. Another example, a person who feels overlooked at work but continues to add value, help others, and improve their skills. No applause, no promotion yet, but they are sowing competence and credibility. When opportunity eventually arises, sometimes suddenly they are ready. Others call it luck. Heaven calls it harvest. This principle also applies relationally. Sowing forgiveness when you feel justified in holding resentment is one of the hardest seeds to plant. It feels like loss. But unforgiveness poisons the soil of your future. When you release bitterness, you make room for peace, and peace is essential for discernment when wealth and opportunity arrive. A wounded heart cannot steward well. Chosen one, do not underestimate small, faithful actions in hidden seasons. The ground may look dry, but God sees beneath the surface. Roots grow where eyes cannot see. Harvest is not delayed, it is developing. And often, the longer the drought, the deeper the roots must go. That depth is what sustains abundance later. The voice of God speaks through the writings of Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. Chapter 11, verse 1. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. This is why consistency matters more than intensity right now. You do not need dramatic gestures. You need faithful rhythms, regular prayer, thoughtful generosity, disciplined work, honest reflection. These are seeds, and seeds planted faithfully always respond to God's timing, not human impatience. There is also a warning hidden in this principle. If you refuse to sow in drought, abundance can actually harm you. Without the habits formed in lack, increase becomes overwhelming. Money without discipline creates anxiety. Opportunity without identity creates confusion. Influence without humility creates isolation. God is protecting you by teaching you how to sow now. Chosen one. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. You are being shown how to live before the shift happens so that when it does, you are not shaken. Sowing in drought trains you to trust God as your source, not circumstances. And when God is your source, seasons lose their power to define you. As a sign of alignment, anchor this teaching with a simple declaration. Comment a prophetic number below 7727 not as superstition, but as agreement. It is a way of saying, I choose faith over fear. I will sow even when it's dry, trusting God for the harvest. Chosen one, there is a moment in every divine journey where preparation meets decision. Not emotion, not excitement, decision. This is where obedience stops being theoretical and becomes costly, and it is also where acceleration is unlocked. Not because God suddenly becomes willing, but because you finally become aligned. Obedience is not passive agreement, it is active surrender. It is choosing God's instruction even when it contradicts comfort, logic, or timing preferences. Many desire sudden wealth, but few understand that speed in God's kingdom is not activated by ambition. It is activated by obedience. Heaven does not respond to urgency. It responds to alignment. You have already experienced this on smaller scales. Moments when you obeyed quietly and doors opened unexpectedly. Times when a single choice made without applause shifted the trajectory of your life. Obedience compresses time. What might have taken years through striving can happen suddenly through surrender. This is why disobedience feels heavy. It slows momentum, it fragments focus, it introduces friction into what could have flowed. Chosen one. Delayed obedience is still disobedience, not because God is harsh, but because timing matters. Some doors are seasonal. Some instructions are moment-specific. Obedience after clarity has passed does not carry the same acceleration. This is why you have felt a growing insistence in your spirit lately, a sense that hesitation is no longer neutral. You are not being rushed. You are being positioned. Obedience often looks smaller than expected. It may be a conversation you've been avoiding, a habit you've been excusing, a boundary you've delayed enforcing, a step you've postponed because it didn't look profitable enough. But in God's economy, small obediences unlock large movements. The seed is always smaller than the harvest. Always. There is also a reason obedience is tested right before breakthrough. It reveals who you are following. When the reward is visible, obedience is easy. When the outcome is hidden, obedience is pure. God accelerates what He can trust. Trust is built when you obey without leverage, without guarantees, without manipulation. You must also understand this obedience is directional. It does not just move you forward, it moves you away from certain environments, away from certain dependencies, away from certain versions of yourself. This is why obedience can feel like loss before it feels like gain. But what you leave behind creates the space necessary for what is coming next. Chosen one, acceleration does not mean chaos. God's speed is orderly, it is precise. When you obey, multiple things begin to align simultaneously: relationships, opportunities, timing, resources. It feels sudden because it was prepared quietly. Heaven rarely explains the full plan in advance. It reveals the next step and watches how you respond. This is where many stumble. They want clarity before obedience. God wants obedience before clarity, because clarity without obedience produces pride. Obedience without clarity produces trust, and trust is the currency of acceleration. There is also a sobering truth: partial obedience delays momentum. Doing most of what God says while holding on to one exception keeps you in cycles. Acceleration requires full alignment, not perfection but honesty. When God highlights something specific, it is not to shame you, it is to free you. What He points to is usually the very thing restricting flow. You may be sensing this now. A repeated nudge, a quiet conviction, a decision that keeps resurfacing. This is not condemnation, this is invitation. God is not asking you to earn blessing. He is asking you to remove resistance. Obedience does not force God's hand. It clears the channel, clears the ancient words still carry authority here. The voice of God thundered in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 2. All these blessings will come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Notice the language. Blessings do not crawl, they overtake. But the condition is clear. Obedience activates pursuit. Chosen one. Overtaking implies speed. It implies movement faster than expectation. It implies blessing arriving before you feel ready. This is not metaphor, it is spiritual law. When obedience is established, acceleration follows naturally. You don't chase blessing, it catches you. This also explains why disobedience feels exhausting. You were not designed to resist God. Resistance requires energy. Obedience releases it. When you align, peace increases even before circumstances change. That peace is not the reward, it is the confirmation that acceleration has begun. Do not confuse obedience with loss of control. It is the opposite. Obedience places you under divine order, and order produces authority. Authority produces influence. Influence attracts provision. This is the chain. Break one link, and flow is interrupted. Strengthen one link, obedience, and the entire system responds. Chosen one. Wealth that arrives through obedience does not dominate you. It serves you. It does not distract you. It equips you. Because it arrived through surrender, it remains submitted. That is the kind of wealth God entrusts to His chosen. You are closer than you think, not because circumstances are perfect, but because alignment is deepening. Stay attentive. Stay responsive. The next instruction may not look dramatic, but it will be decisive. And when you obey, acceleration will not announce itself. You will simply look back one day and realize how quickly everything changed. Chosen one. This is where everything converges, not into comfort, not into applause, but into consecration. Wealth, when it finally manifests, is not heaven's apology for your suffering. It is heaven's endorsement of your assignment. You are not being elevated to escape the world, you are being elevated to influence it. This is the distinction that separates those who are briefly blessed from those who are entrusted for generations. What is coming into your hands is not random increase. It is targeted provision. It has direction, intention, and responsibility attached to it. God is not crowning you so you can live louder. He is crowning you so you can build deeper. The weight you are about to carry is not just financial, it is spiritual. Influence always weighs more than money. You were shaped deliberately for this, Gordon. That is why your journey demanded patience before reward, obedience before clarity, and endurance before expansion. God was never just testing whether you could receive wealth. He was testing whether wealth could pass through you without corrupting your spirit. Many ask for increase, but few ask for the wisdom to steward it. You did not rush this process, even when it hurt. That restraint matters now. Chosen one, you are being crowned to fund purpose, not just personal dreams, but kingdom outcomes. To support work that restores dignity. To back visions that heal rather than exploit. To empower people without controlling them. Wealth in your hands is meant to become infrastructure for good. Quiet, effective, lasting good. This is why humility must remain non-negotiable. Elevation will introduce you to rooms you once prayed to enter. When you walk into them, remember who trained you in the shadows. Remember the God who sustained you when visibility was absent. Pride disconnects you from source. Gratitude keeps you aligned. You will also notice that not everyone understands your rise. Some will celebrate loudly. Others will grow distant. Some will question motives. Others will project their fears onto your obedience. Do not internalize any of it. Validation is not your compass anymore. Assignment is. You are no longer moving to be understood, you are moving to be obedient. There is a temptation at this level to shrink your calling to stay relatable. Resist it. Playing small does not honor God. False humility can be just as disobedient as arrogance. If God expands your territory, it is because your capacity has already been stretched internally. Walk in what He has given you without apology, but also without performance. Quiet authority lasts longer than loud success. Chosen one, understand this clearly: wealth will amplify whatever governs you. If fear governs you, it will multiply anxiety. If ego governs you, it will magnify isolation. But if obedience governs you, wealth becomes a servant, not a master. This is why intimacy with God cannot become optional now. The higher you rise, the closer you must stay. You are being shaped into a torchbearer. Light does not argue with darkness, it exposes it. Exposure always creates reaction. Stay anchored, stay discerning, stay submitted to God even when others submit to you. Authority under God produces legacy. Authority without God produces collapse. You have been trained for the first, not the second. Rest will also become sacred at this stage. You are not called to grind endlessly to prove your worth. You are called to abide and produce fruit. Rhythm protects longevity. Sabbath thinking preserves clarity. When God blesses you, He also teaches you when to stop, when to listen, and when to delegate. Burnout is not a badge of honor, it is often a sign of misalignment. The ancient scriptures anchor you here. The ancient words recorded in the book of Psalms, chapter 112, verse 3 declare, "Wealth and riches are in His house, and His righteousness endures forever." Notice the order. Wealth is mentioned, but righteousness defines the legacy. Money may arrive suddenly, but character determines what remains. Chosen one. This verse is not about excess, it is about endurance. Wealth that is rooted in righteousness outlives trends, markets, and opinions. It builds households, communities, and futures. That is the kind of wealth God is entrusting to you, not to impress, but to establish. As you step into this season, remember, generosity is not something you schedule, it is something you embody. Wisdom will guide where you give, how you build, and when you wait. Not every opportunity is yours. Not every cause is your assignment. God will direct your hands as long as your heart stays yielded. If this message has strengthened your clarity and steadied your spirit, you are welcome gently and sincerely to support its reach. A simple like or share helps this message find others who are standing at similar thresholds. Subscribing keeps you connected to teachings meant to guide you beyond the breakthrough, not just into it. Community matters at this level. Growth is sustained best when truth is shared. You are not behind. You are not unqualified, and you are not here by chance. You are crowned for purpose, positioned by obedience, and sustained by grace. Walk forward with humility. Steward with wisdom. And remember, what God entrusts to you is meant to outlive you. Before you move on, let this linger with you for a moment. You don't need to rush to decide what this message means or what you should do next. Some words are not meant to be acted on immediately. They are meant to settle, to echo, to reveal their meaning gradually as life unfolds. What matters most is not how quickly you respond, but how deeply you receive. You know now that nothing about your journey has been random. The pressure, the waiting, the preparation, the quiet strengthening, all of it has been shaping you for something that is still unfolding. You don't need to force the next chapter open. When it's time, it will open on its own, and you will recognize it. If this message brought clarity, peace, or confirmation, you are free to let it end here. And if, at some point, you feel moved to pass it along, to like it, to share it with someone else who might need it, that choice is yours. There is no pressure, no obligation. Truth has a way of traveling exactly as far as it needs to. Carry what resonated, release what didn't. Stay attentive, stay grounded, and trust that when the next step matters, you will know. For now, let the silence do its work.